Sasuke's relationship with Orochimaru was built on mutual exploitation from the beginning. Orochimaru wanted Sasuke's body as a vessel, while Sasuke wanted power to kill Itachi. But when Orochimaru finally attempted to take over Sasuke's body during the body transfer ritual, Sasuke turned the tables completely. Using his evolved Sharingan and the mental strength he developed over 3 years of training, Sasuke reversed Orochimaru's possession technique. Instead of becoming Orochimaru's new vessel, Sasuke absorbed his master into his own consciousness, effectively killing Orochimaru while gaining access to all his knowledge and abilities. Sasuke's decision wasn't driven by hatred or revenge against Orochimaru personally, but by his realization that he had learned everything he could from the Sannin. Orochimaru had served his purpose as a teacher, and now Sasuke needed to move beyond his master's limitations to achieve his true goal. The irony is that Orochimaru had taught Sasuke too well. The very techniques and mental fortitude that Orochimaru had cultivated in his student became the weapons used against him. Sasuke's ability to resist possession came directly from the training Orochimaru had provided. Even after absorbing Orochimaru, Sasuke continued to use his master's techniques and knowledge, showing that while he had killed his teacher, he still carried Orochimaru's legacy within him. Vader's story perfectly exemplifies the master-killing archetype. Anakin's relationship with Obi-Wan was destroyed by his fall to the dark side, but his confrontation with Emperor Palpatine represents the ultimate student surpassing master moment. For over 20 years, Palpatine had been Vader's master in the dark side, teaching him to channel his hatred and pain into power. But Palpatine's greatest mistake was underestimating the one thing he couldn't corrupt in Vader, his love for his son Luke. When Palpatine attempted to kill Luke with Force lightning, Vader faced the ultimate choice between his master's teachings and his paternal instincts. The love that Palpatine had tried to destroy became the force that led to his downfall. Vader's decision to kill Palpatine wasn't just about saving Luke, it was about rejecting everything his master represented and choosing redemption over power. By throwing Palpatine down the reactor shaft, Vader killed both his master and the dark side identity that Master had created. The sacrifice cost Vader his life, but it also proved that even the most corrupted student could surpass their master's influence when motivated by something stronger than fear or hatred. While Griffith didn't have a traditional master, his betrayal and destruction of the Band of the Hawk represents the ultimate corruption of leadership and mentorship. Guts had looked up to Griffith as both leader and inspiration, making Griffith's sacrifice of his followers particularly devastating. During the eclipse, Griffith's decision to sacrifice the Band of the Hawk to become Femto was the ultimate rejection of his role as their leader and protector. He literally fed his most loyal followers to demons to achieve his transformation into a member of the God Hand. Griffith's choice was motivated by his realization that his human limitations would never allow him to achieve his dream of having his own kingdom. By sacrificing those who trusted him most, he gained the power to transcend mortality and pursue his ambitions without restraint. The twisted nature of Griffith's ascension is that he had to destroy the very people who had made his rise possible. His followers' loyalty and sacrifice had elevated him to leadership, and he repaid that devotion by using them as stepping stones to godhood. Griffith's transformation into Femto represents the complete death of his human identity and his bonds with others. He killed not just his followers, but the part of himself that had been capable of genuine connection and leadership. Light's relationship with Ryuk was unique. Ryuk wasn't exactly a master, but he was the source of Light's power and served as a guide to the Death Note's rules. When Ryuk finally wrote Light's name in his Death Note, it represented the culmination of their twisted partnership. From the beginning, Ryuk had made it clear that he would eventually kill Light, either out of boredom or when Light's usefulness ended. But Light had always believed he could control or outlast the Shinigami through his superior intelligence and planning. Light's downfall came when he lost control of the situation and faced capture by Near and the investigation team. Faced with the prospect of imprisonment and the end of his reign as Kira, Light begged Ryuk to kill his enemies, revealing his desperation and dependence. Ryuk's decision to write Light's name was both merciful and inevitable. Rather than let Light suffer capture and prosecution, Ryuk ended their partnership the way he had always intended, by taking Light's life when the game was no longer entertaining. The irony is that Light, who had used the Death Note to judge and execute thousands, was ultimately judged by the very source of his power. Ryuk's final act proved that Light had never been the god he believed himself to be, just another human playing with forces beyond his control. Sasori's murder of the third Kazekage, who had taught him puppet techniques and served as a father figure, represents one of anime's most shocking betrayals. Sasori's transformation of his beloved master into a human puppet shows how completely his humanity had been corrupted. The third Kazekage had taken Sasori under his wing after his parents died, teaching him advanced puppet techniques and treating him like family. But Sasori's obsession with creating perfect, eternal art led him to see even his master as material for his collection. Sasori's decision to kill the Kazekage wasn't motivated by hatred or revenge, but by his twisted artistic vision. He believed that by turning his master into a puppet, he was preserving him in a perfect, unchanging form that would last forever. The third Kazekage puppet became Sasori's masterpiece and most powerful weapon, retaining all of the original's jutsu and abilities. In a sense, Sasori's master continued to serve him even in death, fighting battles as a puppet that he never could have won in life. Sasori's complete lack of remorse about his actions shows how thoroughly he had abandoned human emotions in favor of his art. He genuinely believed he had honored his master by giving him eternal life as a puppet, demonstrating his complete disconnection from normal moral thinking. Though not anime, Zuko's confrontation with his father Ozai during the eclipse represents a student finally standing up to an abusive master. While Zuko didn't physically kill Ozai, he destroyed their relationship and everything Ozai had tried to teach him about power and dominance. For years, Ozai had trained Zuko to be ruthless, to value strength above all else, and to see the Fire Nation's conquest as righteous. But Zuko's experiences during his exile taught him that his father's lessons were wrong and destructive. During their confrontation, Zuko systematically rejected every aspect of Ozai's teaching, calling out his father's cruelty and explaining why the Fire Nation's war was evil. This verbal assault was more devastating than any physical attack could have been. Zuko's decision to join the Avatar and teach him firebending was the ultimate betrayal of everything Ozai represented. By helping the Avatar master firebending, Zuko was directly contributing to his father's eventual defeat. While Aang ultimately defeated Ozai, Zuko's rejection and betrayal had already destroyed the Fire Lord psychologically. Zuko proved that his father's philosophy was empty, and that true strength came from compassion and justice, not dominance and fear. While not exactly master-student relationships, several of Aizen's followers eventually turned against him when they realized the true nature of his plans. Jin Ichimaru spent decades planning Aizen's downfall, while characters like Tausen had their own moments of realization. Gin's entire relationship with Aizen was built on deception. While appearing to be Aizen's loyal lieutenant, Gin was actually planning revenge for what Aizen had done to Rangiku. His patient, decades-long plan to find Aizen's weakness showed incredible dedication to his true goal. When Jin finally struck against Aizen, using his Bankai's hidden ability to leave a piece of his sword in Aizen's chest, it represented the culmination of years of careful planning and observation. Jin had learned everything about Aizen's abilities, specifically to find a way to kill him. Tausen's realization that Aizen had corrupted his sense of justice led to his own internal conflict, though he ultimately chose loyalty over righteousness. His death served as a warning about the cost of following a master whose goals contradict your core values. These betrayals show that even Aizen, with all his manipulation and planning, couldn't completely control those who served him. His subordinates retained enough independence to eventually see through his deceptions and act against him. While Gon never literally killed a master, his confrontation with Kite's reanimated corpse and his rage-fueled transformation against Pitou represents a student destroying the memory and teachings of his mentor in pursuit of revenge. Kite had served as Gon's first real mentor in the hunter world, teaching him advanced Nen techniques and the responsibilities that came with being a hunter. Kite's death at Pitou's hands triggered a psychological breakdown that consumed Gon completely. Gon's transformation during his fight with Pitou involved sacrificing everything Kite had taught him about restraint, growth, and the proper use of power. He abandoned all of Kite's lessons in favor of raw, destructive force focused solely on revenge. By aging himself to his peak potential and focusing all his life force into a single attack, Gon effectively killed his own future and destroyed the careful development that Kite had fostered. He chose revenge over the patient growth his master had advocated. The aftermath of Gon's transformation left him unable to use Nen and disconnected from the hunter path that Kite had helped him discover. In destroying Pitou, Gon also destroyed the part of himself that Kite had helped create and nurture. Ichigo's relationship with his inner hollow, Old Man Zangetsu, and the revelation about his true Zanpakuto spirit created a complex situation where he had to kill the manifestation that had been teaching him throughout the series. For most of the series, Ichigo believed he was learning from his Zanpakuto spirit, Old Man Zangetsu, But the revelation that this figure was actually a manifestation of his Quincy powers, and that his true Zanpakuto spirit was the young man he'd been fighting as his inner hollow, changed everything. When Ichigo finally learned the truth about his powers, he had to confront and essentially destroy the old man Zangetsu, who had been limiting his true potential while pretending to help him grow stronger. This required rejecting years of guidance and training. The process of reforging his Zanpakuto involved accepting his true hollow powers and Quincy heritage while abandoning the false teachings of the old man. Ichigo had to kill his relationship with his supposed master to unlock his real abilities. This transformation represented Ichigo's growth beyond the need for a master figure and his acceptance of the complex nature of his own power. By destroying his false teacher, he became truly independent and reached his full potential. While Edward never killed his teacher, Izumi Curtis, his confrontation with Father and the rejection of Father's alchemical philosophy represents a student surpassing and destroying his indirect master's teachings. Father, as the source of alchemical knowledge in Amestris, had indirectly taught every alchemist in the country, including Edward. The techniques Edward used were all derived from the system Father had created and maintained for centuries. When Edward discovered the truth about Father's plan and the source of Amestrian alchemy, he had to reject everything he thought he knew about equivalent exchange and the nature of alchemical power. This required abandoning the fundamental principles he'd been taught. Edward's final confrontation with Father involved using alchemy powered by tectonic energy rather than Father's philosopher's stone network. By accessing this pure form of alchemy, Edward essentially rejected Father's corrupted version of the science. The ultimate irony is that Edward defeated Father by giving up his alchemical abilities entirely, trading his gate of truth to restore Alphonse's body. This sacrifice represented the complete rejection of Father's philosophy that power was the ultimate goal. Kaneki's relationship with various mentors throughout Tokyo Ghoul culminated in his confrontation with the One-Eyed King and his eventual assumption of that role, effectively killing his previous identity and the teachings of those who had guided him. Throughout his transformation from human to ghoul, Kaneki was guided by figures like Yoshimura and later Arima, who taught him how to survive and fight in the ghoul world. But each teacher also represented limitations that Kaneki eventually had to overcome. When Kaneki finally learned that Arima was the One-Eyed King and that their battles had been part of a larger plan to create a new leader for ghouls, he faced the ultimate test of his growth. Arima's final battle was designed to either kill Kaneki or force him to surpass his master. Kaneki's victory over Arima wasn't just a physical triumph, but a psychological one. He had to reject the cycle of violence and hatred that his master represented, while embracing a new vision of coexistence between humans and ghouls. By becoming the new One-Eyed King, Kaneki effectively killed the old system that his masters had perpetuated, and took on the responsibility of creating something better from the ruins of their teachings. While Tanjiro never literally killed his master Urokodaki, his confrontation with Muzan represents the ultimate student surpassing master moment, as Tanjiro had to go beyond everything he'd been taught to defeat the original demon. Urokodaki had taught Tanjiro the water-breathing techniques and the mental discipline needed to become a demon slayer. But when facing Muzan, Tanjiro discovered that his master's teachings alone weren't enough to defeat the Demon King. Tanjiro's development of his own breathing style and his unique approach to fighting demons, focusing on compassion rather than hatred, represented a departure from traditional Demon Slayer methodology. He had to evolve beyond his master's teachings to succeed. The final battle with Muzan required Tanjiro to access powers and techniques that went far beyond what any master had taught him. His transformation and the use of abilities he'd never trained for showed his growth beyond conventional instruction. Most importantly, Tanjiro's ability to show compassion even to Muzan and his search for a cure, rather than just destruction, represented a philosophy that surpassed what any of his teachers had advocated. He became something greater than what his masters had envisioned.